Today, I'm going to tell you a story in clear, easy English. We will be working at level B2, intermediate. Turn on the subtitles to see the translation in your own language. I broke the rules to find my freedom. I grew up in a quiet coastal town, the kind of place where everyone knows your name and your business. People waved politely, fishermen fixed their nets, and children biked the same safe streets every day. Life looked peaceful, but it felt like a small box. My family believed in routine, order, and tradition. My father woke at 5 every morning to go out on his boat. My mother cooked breakfast at 6 on the dot. By 7, I was expected to be studying at the table. No exceptions, no arguments. From childhood, I was told exactly who to become. Join the family business, they said, smiling proudly. Fishing is honest work, dependable and true. But the ocean didn't call to me the way it called them. I wanted something different, though I didn't know what. When I was 15, I discovered an old camera in a box. Its metal was worn, the lens scratched. I lifted it to my eye just to see the world differently. One click, one frozen moment of light changed me. I felt something wild open inside me. From then on, I photographed everything I could find. Cracked sidewalks after the rain, the stray orange cat, the way sunlight broke into pieces on the water, even my father's hands, strong and tired from years of work. Images spoke louder to me than any conversation. My parents didn't understand this new passion. They thought it was a phase, or worse, a distraction. Pictures won't feed you, my father warned sharply. You can't build a life out of hobbies, my mother added. But their words only made my curiosity burn brighter. I started taking risks to follow my new dream. I skipped chores, then classes, then whole afternoons. I wandered the harbor with my camera, chasing light. Each picture felt like a tiny rebellion, a secret escape. I knew I was breaking their rules, but I couldn't stop. At 16, I entered my first photo contest. I didn't tell anyone, not my friends, not my parents. The theme was Voices of the Everyday. I submitted a photo of my father's weathered hands, hoping the judges would see what I saw, quiet strength. 2 weeks later, an envelope arrived in the mail. Inside was a letter saying I had won second place. There was a certificate, a small cash prize, and an invitation to show my work in a gallery. My heart beat so hard I thought it might break free. When my parents found out, they weren't proud. They were angry that I had gone behind their backs. You lied, my father said, his voice heavy and cold. My mother looked disappointed in a way that hurt more. Dreams are fine, she whispered, but not at this cost. For months, we hardly spoke about photography. I followed their rules again, at least on the surface. But inside, my world had already expanded too far. I couldn't fit back into the small box they wanted. The silence between us grew like a thick fog. By the time I turned 17, I had a plan. I worked extra hours at the grocery store in town. I saved every dollar in a shoebox under my bed. My dream was no longer the camera. It was freedom. I wanted a life where my choices actually mattered. The night before my 18th birthday, I left home. I packed my camera, 2 notebooks, and spare clothes. The town was asleep except for the restless ocean. I whispered goodbye to the only life I had ever known. Then I boarded a bus heading north to the city. The city hit me like a wave, loud, bright, alive. Cars honked, street vendors shouted, music spilled everywhere. People moved with purpose, as if they all had stories to tell. I felt terrified, small, but also incredibly alive. For the first time, my future felt open. I stayed in a cheap hostel and searched for work. I asked at cafes, bookstores, even a flower shop. Most employers said no, some said maybe, and one finally said yes, a small art supply store. It wasn't photography, but it was close enough. The store owner, a silver-haired woman named Elise, noticed the camera hanging around my neck. She asked to see my photos during lunch break. I showed her my favorite ones, hands shaking. She studied them quietly like they were precious. When she finally spoke, her words changed everything. "You have an eye for emotion," she said softly. "Keep going. Don't let anyone dim this." No one had ever spoken to me that way before. Her belief felt like a doorway opening. Elise introduced me to her friend Marco, a photographer. He invited me to assist him at events on weekends. I carried equipment, adjusted lights, learned the trade. Every click of the shutter felt like a step forward. I was building a life from the ground up. But freedom wasn't simple, and it wasn't gentle. I missed my parents more than I expected. Some nights I stared at my phone wanting to call. Other nights I cried quietly in my small rented room. Independence tasted sweet, but also sharp. One day, Marco told me about a national competition. "Your work deserves to be seen," he insisted. I doubted myself, but Elise pushed me too. So I entered, submitting a new collection of photos, portraits of strangers who carried stories in their eyes. Weeks passed with no news. I worked, saved money, practiced constantly. Then an email appeared in my inbox. I had been chosen as one of the finalists. My hands shook as I read the words again and again. The finalists' exhibition took place in a grand hall filled with judges, critics, and curious visitors. My photos hung on the wall like pieces of my soul. I felt exposed, vulnerable, completely alive. My heart beat like a drum as people stopped to look. A woman in a red scarf approached one portrait. It was a picture of an elderly man smiling sadly. She stared at it for a long time, then wiped a tear. She turned to me and whispered, "Thank you." In that moment, I understood my purpose. I didn't win first prize, but I won something better. A gallery owner offered to feature my work. A magazine wanted to interview me. Marco hugged me. Elise cried proud tears, and I felt for the first time truly seen. When the interview was published, my parents read it. A week later, my phone rang with a familiar number. My father's voice was unsure, but softer than I remembered. "We're proud of you," he said quietly. My mother added, "We just wanted you to be safe." We talked for an hour, sharing both hurt and hope. I told them I loved them, but needed my own path. They told me they missed me more than they expected. It wasn't a perfect reunion, but it was a beginning. Sometimes freedom means forgiving the past. Months later, I stood at my first solo exhibition. People walked through the gallery studying my work. Each photo held a piece of my story, my rebellion, my fear, my courage, my desire to live fully. I realized I had created a life I once only imagined. I thought about that quiet town by the sea, about the rules that shaped me, the ones I broke, about the moment I left, terrified but determined. If I hadn't walked away, I wouldn't be here now. Freedom, I learned, is rarely given. It's chosen. Even now, I still keep the old camera on my desk. The scratched lens, the worn metal, the heavy weight. It reminds me of who I was and who I became. I pick it up sometimes just to feel its history. It taught me to see the world and myself clearly. If anyone asks how I found my freedom, I tell them the truth, simple and unpolished. I broke the rules that held me small. I followed the voice inside that refused to fade. And step by step, I walked my way into the light.
If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell. Until next time, take care and learn something new every day.